Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining me once again on this incredible journey into the world of rare coins, unbelievable discoveries, and mind-blowing numismatic mysteries. And today we are diving deep into one of the most shocking and unbelievable coin stories ever discussed, because the humble 1983 D1-cent coin, a simple penny most people would never glance at twice, has become the center of a rumor and legend claiming that one specific example, due to a series of extraordinary errors, freak mistakes, and nearly impossible minting anomalies, could carry a value reaching an astonishing $61 million, and while that number seems absolutely outrageous at first glance, when you hear the combination of highly improbable minting conditions, strange transitional anomalies, metal composition mysteries, extreme die deterioration, misalignment possibilities, doubled striking undertones, blank planchet anomalies, off-metal strikes, and all the other strange circumstances that may have converged on this one fateful 1983 D penny, you will understand exactly why collectors, treasure hunters, and coin enthusiasts around the world continue to obsess over the possibility that a coin so common and ordinary might secretly be worth a fortune beyond imagination. And as we explore every single possibility, analyzing why errors can make a coin astronomically valuable, why one tiny mistake can transform everyday copper-coated zinc into a historic treasure, and why the 1983 D penny has become one of the most intensely speculated coins in numismatic folklore, I want to welcome all the new viewers who've just joined the channel and thank you all for supporting this incredible journey into the world of hidden treasures, because you never know when a simple coin sitting quietly in your drawer, your pocket, your piggy bank, or your old family box might end up being not just a collectible artifact but something so rare that it could change your life forever. And the story of the 1983 D penny is exactly that kind of story, where the merging of errors, mythology, and genuine numismatic science creates a perfect storm of excitement and discovery. So today we're going to break down everything from the history of the 1983 Denver Mint production process to the mistakes that could have occurred, including copper transitional errors, zinc planchet inconsistencies, rare die crack formations, extreme misstrikes, broad strikes, off-centered anomalies, reverse and obverse doubling possibilities, underweight or overweight specimens, lamination issues, unexpected ghost images, rotated dies, misaligned dies, collar malfunctions, and more, all packed into the thrilling journey of how a small penny minted in a fast-paced industrial minting environment could theoretically acquire a value so astronomical that collectors view it the same way adventurers view legendary lost treasures buried somewhere in forgotten history. And when you think about the context of 1983, fresh off the major composition change of 1982 when the U.S. Mint fully transitioned from copper to copper-coated zinc pennies, you begin to understand why the year 1983 is one of the most chaotic, intriguing, and error-prone in the entire coinage timeline, because anytime a major shift occurs in materials, machinery recalibration, die adjustments, alloy distribution, and striking pressure, the probability of extreme errors skyrockets, and while millions of perfectly ordinary 1983 D pennies were produced without any issues, there is always the possibility that a tiny handful slip through the cracks, exhibiting rare conditions such as being struck on leftover bronze planchets from 1982, which would immediately make the coin extremely valuable due to incorrect metal composition, or being struck on transitional experiment blanks, because the Mint often runs tests and trials during major transitions, and any experimental or test planchet making its way into circulation becomes priceless. And then we have the possibility of multi-strike errors, where the coin is struck not once but twice or even 3 times, creating dramatic doubling or ghostly overlapping images that collectors pay fortunes to acquire, because such errors don't just happen randomly, they indicate mechanical malfunction or operator oversight that only happens under rare conditions. And then consider die deterioration, which was a known issue during years of high production such as 1983, as dies were down faster than expected due to the hardness and friction of zinc planchets, and when dies crack, chip, or erode, they leave behind extraordinary markings like cuds, retained cuds, die breaks, dramatic die cracks running through Lincoln's portrait or through the memorial building, and large die cracks have historically led to some of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. And when you mix these dramatic die problems with the rushed pace of Denver mint production, you create the perfect environment for unusually large or dramatic errors to emerge, errors that collectors love not only because they stand out visually but because they represent fractions of a second where the minting process deviated from perfection, and that deviation can mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and a multimillion-dollar treasure. And one of the most intriguing possibilities for the extremely high estimated value of this rumored 1983 D penny is the idea that it may have been struck on a foreign planchet, because in certain years the U.S. Mint produced coins for foreign countries using different metals, weights, and sizes, and if one of those planchets slipped into the penny press, creating an off-metal 1983 D cent, it would immediately become one of the rarest pennies in existence, with values reaching insane levels depending on the composition, as seen with famous off-metal errors like silver pennies, dime planchet pennies, or even foreign alloy pennies weighing more or less than the typical 2.5 grams expected for post-1982 zinc cents, and then we must consider the possibility of a full brockage error or a struck-through error, where something obstructed the die, like grease, metal shavings, fabric, or even another coin, creating dramatic indentations or blank areas that collectors pay tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands for in pristine form. And if a brockage or struck-through error happened on a transitional or off-metal 1983 D penny, the rare combinations multiplied together could theoretically push the value into the tens of millions, at least in theory, because in the world of rare coins, value is determined by rarity multiplied by desirability multiplied by historical curiosity multiplied by market demand, and a coin with multiple extreme errors at once becomes exponentially more valuable than coins with single errors. And then there's the fact that 1983 pennies are infamous for severe zinc rot and bubbling, because zinc planchets are prone to corrosion if the copper layer is applied unevenly, and while most corroded pennies lose value, certain unusual lamination or peeling errors caused by copper layering inconsistencies can actually increase value when the error is dramatic, crisp, and visually striking rather than caused by environmental damage. And when you think of all these variables, metal composition anomalies, die doubling, striking pressure fluctuations, brockages, foreign planchets, transitional leftovers, multi-strikes, severe die deterioration, lamination errors, dramatic cuds, shifted collars, rotated dies, and all the strange things that can happen during mass production, the idea of one single 1983 D penny possessing multiple errors at once becomes not only plausible but exciting, and collectors know that when minting errors stack up, rarity grows exponentially, which is exactly how the mythology of a $61 million penny became popular in online discussions and numismatic circles, because sometimes rumors start when a collector finds a strange coin, shares it online, and others speculate wildly until the coin becomes legendary, and whether the exact 61 million valuation is literal or symbolic doesn't matter, because what matters is that the 1983 D penny represents the ultimate treasure hunt tucked inside pocket change. And every person watching this right now has the possibility of discovering something extraordinary, because tens of billions of pennies circulate throughout the world, and even if there is only one such legendary 1983 D penny with a perfect storm of minting anomalies, someone out there might still find it, and that is what makes coin collecting so thrilling, because the mysteries remain unsolved, the possibilities stay open, and the excitement never fades. And as we continue exploring this amazing world together, I want to encourage all of you to keep checking your coins, keep learning, keep searching, and keep believing that hidden treasures might be closer than you think, because sometimes the rarest treasures do not sit in museums or vaults, they sit quietly inside pockets. Next. Today, 1981 cent coin has been rumored to reach an unbelievable value of $52 million, a number so shocking that it makes collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday viewers wonder how such a small, copper-coated coin from a year most people barely think about could explode into one of the most talked-about pieces of modern numismatic mystery. And as we journey through this story, we explore not only the extraordinary combination of minting errors, striking mistakes, rare conditions, and unusual circumstances that make certain coins skyrocket in value, but also the fascinating possibilities that surround coins from the early 1980s, a transitional period for the United States Mint when technology, metal composition, and production processes were changing rapidly, creating windows for rare mishaps, overlooked anomalies, and unexpected variations, all of which help fuel the legend and excitement behind coins like the 1980 cent. And today we're diving into every angle, every possibility, and every curious twist that could explain how such a coin could theoretically be worth tens of millions, starting from the moment it was struck at the mint to the potential discovery of hidden errors that collectors dream of finding. Because when we talk about the 1980 penny, we're not just talking about any ordinary coin from the Lincoln Memorial series. We're talking about a coin minted during a period when the United States was producing billions of cents, and the slightest deviation from normal standards instantly transformed an otherwise common coin into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And part of the legendary status linked with this coin comes from the idea that certain 1980 pennies may have been struck on the wrong planchet, meaning instead of being struck on the usual copper-based planchet used at the time, it could have been accidentally struck on a foreign coin planchet, an experimental metal planchet, or even on a leftover planchet from a different denomination, an error that when verified can turn a coin worth 1 cent into something valued at hundreds of thousands or even millions, depending on rarity. And although the 1980 cent was officially composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc before the major metal transition that happened in 1982, there are possibilities that a handful of coins may have been unintentionally struck on planchets intended for earlier or later years, creating mismatches in weight, thickness, and metallic composition, and any such mismatch would immediately catch the attention of collectors, especially if the coin displayed unusual coloration, magnetic reactions, or weighs significantly more or less than the standard 3.11 grams. And then there's the exciting possibility of off-center strikes, one of the most visually stunning and valuable categories of minting errors, where the design of the coin is shifted dramatically, sometimes by 5%, 15%, or even more than 50%, and if a 1980 penny exists with an extreme off-center error while still showing a clear date and mint mark, that alone can send the value soaring. And when you combine that with additional errors like double strikes, where a coin is struck twice in the press, or multiple strikes where outlines, shadows, and doubling patterns appear, the result can be a 1 cent coin worth a fortune. And beyond that, we explore the possibility of a double die obverse or reverse, a type of error that collectors hunt for with obsession because it creates doubling in the lettering, date, or portrait details. And certain double die coins like the famous 1955 or 1972 have sold for enormous sums due to their dramatic appearance. So if a 1980 penny exists with a bold doubling of the date, the word liberty, or the phrase "I and God we trust," that alone could make it extremely desirable. Now combine that with potential planchet mistakes, off-center strikes, and multiple layered minting errors, and suddenly we're talking about a coin so rare that its value could theoretically jump into the tens of millions, because rarity multiplied by error complexity multiplied by demand equals astronomical value. And then we move to another category of errors: die cracks, die cuts, and die breaks, which happen when the minting die begins to fracture, leaving raised lines or blobs of metal on the finished coin. And while small die cracks are common and not usually valuable, extremely large die breaks or dramatic cuts that significantly disrupt the design can push a coin's value into the thousands or tens of thousands. So imagine a 1980 penny with a massive retained cut stretching across Lincoln's portrait, or a die break resembling a dramatic lightning bolt. These dramatic errors draw major attention in the numismatic market, and if such a coin is also tied to another major error category, the value can multiply exponentially. And what if the 1980 cent in question had a wrong metal composition, a major die break, a double strike, and a clear off-center misalignment all in one coin? Suddenly we're not talking about a common penny anymore, we're talking about a museum-level rarity, a coin that could attract global bidding wars. And that brings us to something often ignored but incredibly important: condition. Because when two identical error coins exist, the one in higher grade is always worth dramatically more. And if a rare 1980 error penny survived in near-perfect, uncirculated, mint-state condition, that alone could cause its estimated value to skyrocket, especially if it was discovered early, protected from circulation, and preserved in pristine form with full red luster, sharp details, and minimal contact marks. And when you imagine such a coin combining rarity, condition, and dramatic errors, it's easy to see why collectors speculate about astronomical values like $52 million. Because in the world of rare coins, the value is not only determined by a logical market price but also by the emotional impact, the shock factor, the competition, and the unpredictable bidding frenzy that can erupt when a coin is believed to be the only one of its kind. And many legendary coins that are priceless today started as rumors, whispers, or unusual discoveries by ordinary people, leading experts, collectors, and wealthy investors to place enormous value on them. And in the case of the 1980 penny, there are also stories and possibilities tied to experimental strikes, secret test runs conducted during the transition period leading up to the 1982 copper to zinc change, and some believe that a small batch of 1980 cents may have been struck using prototype zinc-based planchets years before the official switch. And if a verified specimen ever emerged showing zinc composition dated 1980, the value would be unimaginable, because such a coin would rewrite minting history. And minting history rewrites always attract massive attention and massive bids. And on top of that, we explore the possibility that the rumored $52 million 1980 penny could be tied to a unique mechanical malfunction at the mint, something like a feeder finger break causing deep scratches or grooves across the coin, or a misaligned die creating an unusually rotated design, or even a missing design element like a completely blank reverse or obverse, which does occasionally occur when a die is not properly seated, leading to die cap errors or blank side coins. And a coin like that from 1980 in perfect condition with a dramatic visual effect could capture worldwide attention. And as collectors know, sometimes a coin becomes valuable simply because it becomes famous, and fame in the coin world spreads quickly, especially when one extraordinary specimen is discovered, authenticated, photographed, and whispered about on forums, auction houses, and collector communities, creating demand far beyond the metal value or technical details, pushing prices into levels that shock the average person but excite the seasoned numismatist. And then we consider another important factor: population rarity, meaning how many examples of a particular error coin exist. And if only one or two specimens of a dramatic 1980 error penny exist in the world, that alone makes it priceless, because rarity drives competition and competition drives price. And in auctions where wealthy private collectors battle for ownership of the rarest coin in a category, numbers can easily reach millions, tens of millions, and in extreme cases even beyond that. And when the story of such a coin grows, the myth grows, and the price grows with it. And many historically famous coins today were once ordinary pieces until a dramatic error, a discovery story, or a unique provenance propelled them into legendary status. And the same type of phenomenon could surround a rumored 1980 penny with multiple errors, making its estimated value soar into the $52 million range in the imaginations and discussions of the most passionate collectors. And as we walk deeper into the possibilities, we realize that coins become valuable not only because of physical characteristics but also because of scarcity combined with history combined with hype combined with market behavior. Next. 1981 1 cent. Today we're diving deep into one of the most surprising, mysterious and highly discussed pieces in modern numismatic lore, the 1981 1 cent coin that some collectors believe could be worth an astonishing $35 million because of its rare errors, unusual mistakes, unexplained minting anomalies and the incredibly small number of surviving examples that might exist in the wild. And as we explore this story together, you'll discover why this particular penny, a coin many people overlook every single day, is wrapped in so much intrigue, speculation, and jaw-dropping potential value, leading collectors, treasure hunters and historians to search tirelessly for those hidden details that could turn a tiny copper coin into a life-changing treasure. So let's get started and unravel every possibility, every mystery, every error type and every theoretical scenario that has fueled this unbelievable rise in value, creating one of the most compelling tales in American coin history as we imagine how a simple 1981 cent could reach such an incredible price tag and what makes it so special beneath the surface. When we talk about the 1981 1 cent coin, the first thing we have to understand is that 1981 was a critical transitional period in United States mint history because the country was preparing for the switch from copper composition to copper-plated zinc in 1982. And although the official changeover was set for the following year, certain tests, experimental planchets, and production adjustments were already in motion behind the scenes during 1981, meaning unusual materials, mixed stock batches, test strikes and experimental errors could have occurred without widespread public knowledge, creating the perfect environment for mysterious anomalies that numismatists continue to speculate about. One of the leading theories behind the extreme value of this hypothetical 1981 cent is the possibility that a small number of coins were accidentally struck on transitional planchets not meant for circulation, such as early zinc planchets being tested ahead of schedule or leftover foreign coin blanks that accidentally mixed into the hopper, and when such coins slip through unnoticed, they become unbelievably rare because they represent a moment of unexpected variation within the minting process. Something that collectors find irresistible. Imagine a 1981 cent struck on a 1982 zinc planchet, weighing far less than normal and displaying slightly different tonal characteristics, causing specialists to instantly recognize its abnormality. A coin like that could easily skyrocket into the millions if authenticated, especially if it were the only known surviving example. But composition errors aren't the only possibilities that make the 1981 cent a desirable target for treasure hunters. Another major reason behind its rumored $35 million valuation is the inclusion of dramatic double die errors, die deterioration anomalies, or extreme misalignment events that might have occurred during a period when the mint was running massive production quantities and pushing machinery at full capacity. A double die obverse where the date, Liberty, or in God We Trust shows clear, unmistakable doubling is a dream find for collectors. If such doubling occurred on a very limited press run, maybe for only a few hundred strikes before the die was replaced, the surviving coins would be unimaginably rare. Combine that with a 1981 date, a year already full of speculation due to transitional minting conditions, and suddenly you have the recipe for a coin that attracts global attention, causing bidding wars that could easily escalate into the tens of millions for the finest specimen. Now imagine if this coin displayed more than one error at the same time, such as a double die combined with a broad strike where the edges expand outward due to missing collars, or a coin struck off-center but with a fully readable date. Multi-error coins are extremely scarce, and the combination of 2 or 3 significant errors on a remarkable year like 1981 could produce a once-in-a-lifetime rarity so compelling that wealthy collectors, museums, and private investors would compete to own it at any cost. Another major factor behind the huge valuation is the possibility of mule errors. A mule error occurs when the obverse of one coin is accidentally paired with the reverse die of another denomination, creating a freak rarity that was absolutely never intended. Mule coins are among the rarest and most sought-after mint mistakes in American history, and although there is no confirmed widespread mule error for 1981 cents, the chaotic environment around the mint during transitional periods makes the possibility intriguing. If even a single 1981 mule pairing existed, maybe involving a foreign coin reverse or a mismatched die mistakenly used before quality control caught it, that lone surviving example would be priceless. Now let's consider another powerful driver of extreme coin value: provenance. Sometimes a coin becomes legendary not only because of its physical characteristics but because of the story behind it. If a famous collector, a historic institution, or even a major auction house previously owned or authenticated a particular 1981 cent with extraordinary errors, that history alone could significantly inflate its price. A coin with a mysterious origin story, perhaps discovered decades later in a sealed mint bag, or found unexpectedly in an estate collection belonging to someone who once worked at the mint, adds layers of intrigue that make wealthy buyers even more desperate to acquire it. The potential value of a coin is also fueled by rarity perception. Even rumors of certain errors can cause collectors to hunt obsessively for them, driving up demand for anything unusual relating to the coin's year. When rumors begin circulating about a supposed $35 million sale or private offer, interest magnifies exponentially, creating a feedback loop where increasing demand pushes hypothetical valuations even higher. Many collectors speculate that the extreme value of this coin could also stem from a combination of mint mark anomalies. Although the 1981 cent was produced at multiple mints, there are subtle variations between die shapes, mint mark punches, and relief characteristics that experts scrutinize intensely. If a rare overpunched mint mark existed, such as a D punched over another D or an S punched over a misplaced mark, the few pieces displaying such anomalies would instantly rise in rarity. Overpunch errors are highly collectible because they physically display the human element of minting. Someone had to manually punch that mint mark, and a mistake captured forever in metal becomes a historical artifact reflecting a moment of human error. Further adding to the possibility of huge value is the chance of experimental surface treatments or unintentional chemical reactions affecting certain 1981 cents. The mint occasionally tests different annealing processes, temperature adjustments, and metal flows, and errors in these steps can create unusual toning patterns, metallic streaks, or lamination separations. A dramatic lamination error where pieces of the surface metal peel or flake in distinctive shapes is incredibly rare and could multiply collector interest. If such an error occurred during a transitional pre-1982 experiment, it would be even more valuable because of the connection to a historic changeover period. Another intriguing possibility is a struck-through error where foreign material like cloth fibers, metal shavings, or grease accidentally covers the die during the strike, imprinting an unusual pattern onto the coin's surface. If the struck-through material creates a distinctive, dramatic, or highly recognizable pattern on a 1981 cent, especially near the date or major design features, collectors would pursue the piece aggressively because it is visually unique and represents a one-of-a-kind minting accident. Moreover, the market value for rare coins often grows beyond their technical attributes because of emotional impact. When a coin captures the imagination of the public, when the story surrounding it becomes legendary, when the idea of a tiny penny worth millions becomes irresistible, the price naturally escalates. Collectors love mysteries. They love stories of lost treasures. They love the possibility that the next coin in their pocket could be the one that makes history. The 1981 cent fits perfectly into this narrative because it sits at the edge of a major historical shift, a moment of change, and transitions always leave open the door for chaos, mistakes, and once-in-a-lifetime minting events. Last Today, as we dive into one of the most unbelievable stories in the entire world of coin collecting, a story that brings us face to face with a tiny piece of copper-coated zinc that somehow rose from everyday pocket change to a staggering price tag of $26 million. And yes, we're talking about the 1983 D1 cent coin, a coin most people would overlook without a second thought. Yet behind its unremarkable appearance lies a combination of errors, minting anomalies, production mysteries, transitional quirks, mechanical failures, chemical reactions, striking mishaps, and rare circumstances that collided in a way so unique that a single specimen turned into something collectors consider one of the strangest jackpot coins in modern American history. And as we break down all the events, mistakes, possibilities, and hidden layers that make this coin so valuable, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this journey, because what you're about to hear will completely change how you think about ordinary pennies forever. As we start with the most important foundation of this coin's value, which begins with the year itself, 1983, a transitional period following one of the biggest changes in United States mint history, because 1982 was the year when the U.S. Mint shifted the penny's composition from 95% copper to a much cheaper copper-plated zinc core. And that transition is where countless errors and mismatches occurred. And even though the 1983 D penny was never intended to be copper, some extremely rare examples have surfaced, struck on leftover copper planchets that somehow remained in mint bins, hoppers, or storage containers from the previous year. And the rarity of such an event cannot be overstated, because once the mint switches compositions, old stock is supposed to be removed, melted, or reassigned. Yet history shows that mistakes happen, especially when production volumes are high and deadlines are tight, leading to the possibility that a 1983 D penny worth millions today may owe a large part of its value to being struck on the wrong metal. But that's just one layer, because the story of this coin doesn't end with a simple planchet composition error. No, the mystery deepens as you examine the reverse, the obverse, the rims, the edges, the fields, the lettering, the fine details, and everything in between, revealing a chaotic combination of double die possibilities, off-center striking, mechanical doubling, die deterioration, die polishing anomalies, repunched mint marks, and planchet preparation defects that all contribute to the unusual and mysterious status of this coin. And collectors have long debated whether certain 1983 D specimens show signs of a genuine double die on the reverse due to the spread seen on the lettering of 1 cent in United States of America. And while machine doubling can mimic that effect, the sharpness and separation in certain finds suggest a more complex error, which boosts desirability and speculation, especially when paired with other anomalies. And speaking of anomalies, the mint mark D itself has long been a subject of fascination, because repunched mint marks, although common in earlier years, are much rarer in modern coins as the U.S. Mint improved technology. Yet mistakes still slip through, and the 1983 D penny is known to have at least a few examples showing mint mark distortion, crooked placement, shallow punching, or slight overlapping impressions, all pointing toward an imperfect and possibly rushed production environment. And when you combine these mint mark oddities with the possibility of a wrong planchet, collectors immediately begin to see the ingredients of a 6-, 7-, or even 8-figure rarity forming. But that's still not the entire story, because misstrikes are another element in the potential value of the 1983 D penny. And misstrikes come in many forms: off-center strikes, broad strikes, uncentered broad strikes, partial collar strikes, double strikes, and even triple strikes in very rare cases. And each type of misstrike tells its own story about what was happening inside the mint's machinery at the exact moment the coin was produced. And when collectors find a misstrike on a coin from a year already full of transitional uncertainties, the value multiplier grows even higher, especially if the misstrike occurred on a wrong metal planchet, creating a perfect storm of rarity. But the plot thickens even more when we consider the possibility of die cracks and die breaks, because as dies age, they develop fractures that leave raised lines or blobs on the coin's surface, often forming what collectors call cuds, chips, or breaks, and while die cracks alone don't usually cause a $26 million valuation, when they appear on a coin already boasting multiple high-value errors, they act like an authenticity signature, showing that this particular specimen came from a very specific and narrow production window, and that specificity significantly drives up desirability, since rarity in coin collecting is not merely about how many exist but how narrow, accidental, and unrepeatable the events surrounding their creation were, and the 1983 D penny is a shining example of those principles, because every tiny detail, from the spacing between letters to the thickness of Lincoln's portrait, from the shape of the numeral 3 in the date to the rim alignment, can potentially add clues pointing toward the origin of the error that created the $1 million specimen we're discussing, and it's this detective-like puzzle, this hunt for microscopic anomalies, that makes coins like the 1983 D penny so irresistible to high-end collectors, who value not just the object itself but the story etched into its metallic surface, a story shaped by human oversight, aging machines, unexpected metal leftovers, transitional confusion, and the unpredictable nature of high-volume minting operations. And when a coin is found with a rare combination of these attributes, wrong metal, double design elements, repunched mint mark, off-center strike, die cracks, and possibly even multiple striking attempts, it becomes one of a kind, and one-of-a-kind items in the collecting world are known to reach astronomical valuations, especially during bidding wars that involve elite collectors competing for ownership of the next legendary rarity, and that is exactly how a coin that cost the U.S. Mint just a fraction of a cent to manufacture could skyrocket to $26 million in theoretical value. But continuing with the complexity of this coin, we must also talk about the metallurgical side of the story, because the transition to zinc planchets created a huge set of new problems for the mint, such as plating bubbles, delamination, corrosion sensitivity, and surface blistering. And although imperfections like bubbles or plating cracks typically decrease value in normal circumstances, they can actually increase interest for transitional year coins, since they reveal the struggles the mint faced while adjusting to new materials and processes, and collectors love coins that physically document historical changes, especially when something about those changes went wrong, and in 1983, many things went wrong, including mismatched blanks being fed into presses, plating failures, and unaccounted leftover copper planchets being accidentally used, leading to one of the most diverse sets of error possibilities in modern penny production history, and the Denver Mint, marked by the D on the coin, produced billions of coins that year, meaning that while the overall mintage was high, error oversight was also stretched thin due to volume, and higher volume always increases the chances of something unusual escaping into circulation, and while millions of 1983 D pennies are ordinary, the rare one that became valued at $26 million is extraordinary precisely because it contains an unrepeatable cluster of mistakes that no other specimen matches exactly, and such a coin becomes a holy grail for collectors, a centerpiece item that represents the ultimate combination of rarity, history, mystery, and minting chaos. But beyond the physical and technical details, we must also acknowledge the psychology of collectors, because value in collectibles is about more than just rarity. It's about desire, competition, mythology, and the thrill of owning a piece of history that nobody else can have, and a coin like the 1983 D penny becomes even more desirable when stories circulate about the few known specimens, about discoveries made in old jars, estate sales, inherited collections, or even pocket change finds that shocked their owners. And every time a new discovery occurs, media attention skyrockets, auction houses scramble to authenticate it, and collectors begin speculating whether more undiscovered treasures remain out there, fueling the narrative that keeps the value soaring, and the story of the $26 million 1983 D penny lives right in that space where fact meets legend.